Hi, I'm Bill Roney, and this is a the lesson about creative visual representation of Succinct reflection. Question one: Why is it important for teachers to consider race, social class, sexual orientation, disability, and other areas of diversity? Well, I'm an ESOL LEP teacher by heart and soul, and I like to get back and do it again later on. Before I found the joy of being an ESOL LEP, teaching it as a second language, I studied history to be a history teacher, studying every aspect of military, from logistics, tactics, and everything in between. I read the small steps that led up to the wars or the revolutions, questions that have been asked about the weakest, and how we helped them. But there's strife and brewing all around, and we're on the front lines as teachers. And some of those steps that I see that led to wars and revolutions is currently happening. I have found that people that ask the question I asked place this political strife upon the teachings, thinking that they have lots of freedom in the class, like professors at the university do. No, teachers do not. They have a very short period of time. They have a curriculum they have to teach by. When they enter the classroom, the first requirement is to have what needs to be taught. Those are primary thoughts on what is needed to be taught by the guidelines, the curriculum, and try to make it as enjoyable as possible and reaching as many students as possible. And but at the same time, we need to keep our open door for issues that occur to create a safe space for the students. Because sometimes they can't go to the parent. They need us as someone that they can feel safe around, that they can bring questions. And just example of current events, pages of centuries of history. Look at the currently at the state of Florida and what DeSantis has done. He changed the textbooks. He changed the curriculum. He took it from Common Core to the Florida Core, which is basically Common Core, and then continue the mandatory exam at the end of the year to keep funding in the schools. If you don't do well, they actually take funding away. He then turned around and accused the teachers of indoctrination of the students with woke and CRT and other hogwash. And this is not a page from history that has happened many times, especially for a dictator takes over in one fashion or another a country. Is why soon after teachers are marched to their death or permanently in prison. Now, we'll go back to the question is why teachers should consider a variety of needs, gifts, cultures, and other areas. On the real world, we're greatly limited in many areas in the classroom wise. In the world around us, in the workplaces, we have many cultures that are around us. Now, if we have an IEP, we can add tools to help those with special needs and teachers' assistants to help them learn what they need to be learned. The LEP students, teaching students learning English as a second language, can get a teacher to help them learn English. But as for the general classroom teachers, their hands are tied behind their back. Now, they could add some culture of the students that are in their classroom to a lesson or activity board. But like I said, in the big picture, their hands are tied on how much they can actually introduce because we're basically teaching to an exam at the end of the year. School doesn't want to lose money. That brings us to question number two. Why is it important for teachers to consider the range of diversity listed in questions? One, when designing and implementing instructions and assessments. Well, it is important to try to add what you can to the lesson that includes different cultures in the classroom so that every student feels included. It may be something as small as like who wrote the landing on the moon technical plan when talking about the moon landing and sharing who Margaret Hamilton is, as other engineers and people on all the variety of different topics that you might be teaching or historical significance. Um, Everybody knows who ran the war in Lexington and Concord, but not everybody knows It's a female writer that's also famous for it. And now I also look at the holidays like Chinese New Year and its traditions, how it's similar or different to American Christmas. Um, you can designate a board to do this as well. Just add to it weekly, take off the old stuff, put new stuff on. As this material, the reward for that is immeasurable because you're making all the students feel involved. You're making all the students like, oh, I'm sharing a little bit of my culture. Oh, I'm learning about other culture. And the light up their eyes is just rewarding in itself. And it's a lot easier for those that have a student with an IEP that's in their general classroom because that can be utilized as an additional tool to add additional material to your lessons to include additional information on what is being taught. And gives them further encouragement for not just the general education kids, but the student that has the IEP that's joining your classroom. And it comes to the third question: how will you consider incorporate these ideas into your own teaching practices? Well, I kind of touched on that one already. As a teaching English as a second language teacher, introducing other cultures, especially for the help of the students, entering a new culture is benefit. These are people from other cultures. You're going to be teaching about the cultures here in the city that they are now arrived to. And the way I have done it in the past is a comparison to show how, being from a different country, we have similarities and are not just differences. There are things that are similar that from my culture to his culture to that culture to that culture. And it can be as simple as the history of the jelly bean. Comparing Korea's version of Thanksgiving to the US and the food that is eaten. Uh, Comparing that to the Chinese New Year. Um, Food is, universal, and there's music, and arts and reading material. So, you'd be surprised at how much a short lesson on the jelly bean can be utilized in a variety of subjects. I mean, counting the jelly beans, or dividing, multiplication, fractions, and where the jelly bean came from. And I've seen how my migrant students react to some of the lessons because A, they're getting something that they can tangibly hold on to. B, later on they can eat it. All right, well, I hope this answers all the questions that our professor was wanting. I think it's a little longer than he was hoping for. If you have any additional questions, be free to ask. Hope to read some of yours and see any suggestions that you make that I might be able to utilize. All right, so much for now.